Hey everybody, Daniel here, and we're still in our lead up to Goku vs. Superman 3, a matchup everybody seems a little sick of. So I thought it'd be fun to find new opponents for both characters. A few days ago I did Goku, and today I'm gonna do Superman. One of my favorite parts of any versus match is the crossover element. Getting to see two characters that would otherwise never see each other duke it out is just sort of fun for me. Now, with Superman, that creates sort of a unique issue. Namely, over his 80-year history, the man's sort of ran into everybody. We're talking about a dude who has ran into Spider Man, Bugs Bunny, and even the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. My man's even currently facing off against Godzilla just in time for Minus One's release. Sometimes that causes images such as this to be passed around more than my ex wife. I can't tell you how much I've seen this all over my social media feed, with people saying things such as, Godzilla confirmed greater than Superman. Is this your champion? Yada yada, yada 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 yada. So let's talk about that for a second. While I don't think we should be using non canon crossover events to determine the winner of a versus match, I kind of understand how it can muddy the waters, especially with somebody whose continuity is as muddled as Superman's. However, I'm not going to let that deter me from putting certain characters on my list. Some matches are just too fun or just fit too well for the character. And with that, let's get started at number 5. Bringing up the rear at number 5 is Sentry from Marvel Comics. The reason he's at the bottom of my list is because, well, other than being a flying brick character with an S plastered on him, he doesn't have all that much in common with Superman. That being said, if you run in the same circles I do, you know that there's kind of a rivalry between these two fan bases. One I feel that's large enough to warrant him having a spot on this list. I also believe their contrasting personalities and their diverse power sets would make for an interesting fight. I sort of picture this as a war of escalation, with the good-natured Clark going up against an increasingly violent Sentry who eventually unleashes the Void. And then I just get Superman versus the Void, and that sounds amazing to me. For number 4, I decided to make it a battle royale between all the members of the Justice League, or at least 7 of the more popular ones. Fans are always talking about which member of the Justice League would take it all in an all-out match, and I think it's time to give the people what they want. The reason this is at number 4 and not higher is because, well, they all exist together in continuity, and I do feel that there's some pretty clear answers as to who would at least get in the top 3 slots of this. We've also had this idea sort of adapted here and there, with clear winners coming out on top. Even so, I do think that if we took some objective looks at who had the greatest feats, we might get to see something interesting, and maybe someone would even surprise us. Though, I do think that the majority of people see it ending in one of two ways, with either Clark being on top, or the Martian Manhunter. But either way, I really just want to see them all go at it, and see who people think would win. At number 3, we have Optimus Prime, a character who has a surprising amount in common with Superman. Both are aliens from a ravaged world, refugees who make Earth their home, and dedicate the rest of their lives to becoming humanity's protectors. Both are sort of the de facto leaders of their group, even if it's not really outright stated for Superman. They both also have a similar color scheme, and I just sort of like that. There's not really a lot else to say. I'm even told that Optimus Prime has some amazing feats in the comics, and while I'm unfamiliar with that, getting to learn about it would be a lot of fun. People can call me a basic bitch all they want for this one, but my number 2 has got to be Thor. You want to talk about some missed opportunities when it comes to returning combatants? People have been pitting Superman and Thor against each other for years. I remember my stepdad telling me all about how Thor would trounce Superman, and one of my good friends is also a huge Thor fan, and you know what? Thor is actually my favorite Marvel character. So getting to see him fight Superman would just be the bee's knees to me. Superman touts how often he has faced gods before, but has he ever faced a powerhouse quite like Marvel's Thor? I don't know. I would just really love to see them stack up against each other feet for feet, determine who's the heavyweight champion of comics in a red cape. Some people may point to the crossover for who would be the obvious victor, but I'm just going to have to disagree. I would really love to do an in-depth analysis over whether or not Superman could actually lift that freaking hammer. Now, before we get on to the number 1, I do have a handful of honorable mentions, even more than I had for Goku. My first honorable mention is the Doctor. The Doctor also has a lot in common with Superman. Both of them are good-natured, last of their species aliens who befriend humanity and just do whatever they can to protect the multiverse. The reason that I really didn't slot the Doctor in on my list is because you know how people always say that Goku and Superman wouldn't fight, they'd be friends? My response to that is usually, well, Goku would fight his friends. When it comes to the Doctor and Superman, I have an even harder time picturing how you could pit them against each other and it even being semi believable, other than maybe making Superman bloodlusted or some nonsense like that. And that just sort of takes me out of it just a little bit. And on top of that, we did just get a Doctor episode, so I don't really want to go through and think about exactly how this match would progress. The next honorable mention is the Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy. Now, I have to be honest, this wasn't a match I came up with. It's just one that I'm seeing passed around a lot. Now, the reason it's not on my list is because I just don't see the connection, and I would love somebody to explain it to me. But what I do like about this is just how different the characters are. And sometimes that's even more important to me than, characters aligning in a certain way or there being a rivalry. Is it just being an interesting question? My third honorable mention is just having Superman run a gauntlet against his clones, having him start at the bottom tier and working his way up. The reason this didn't make my list is because I thought the Justice League question was more interesting, and this one's a little bit more ambitious considering just how many Superman clones there are. And on top of that, it tends to be Superman one shots, or the question is a little too hard, and then it becomes just completely unfair in Superman's corner. Though, this is something I would like to talk about someday. I'm probably going to do a video where I go clone by clone and just go, this is where I think he stacks up in terms of his own tier. My last honorable mention is Injustice Superman vs. Maestro. I know that this isn't exactly an obscure match. I like it because both of these characters are just kind of in their own little tight continuity, so you don't have to go like 80 years back to look at all of their feats. It's a little bit easier to analyze. The reason it didn't make my list is I just really hate evil Superman. I'm not interested in him at all. I think it's the most overdone trope, and I just hate how popular it's gotten. Though there is a little bit of pushback against it these days, and if Death Battle or anyone else decided to do this matchup, I wouldn't exactly hate it. It would give me something to watch, and maybe one day I'll even do an analysis of it if I can find somebody who can bounce off of me on ideas when it comes to Maestro. And with that, let's go to our number one alternative match for Superman, and who could that be other than He-Man, the Master of the Universe. That's right, I said He-Man. A character who hasn't crossed over with Superman just once, not just twice, but 3 times across various continuities. And you know what? Just like with Thor, I really don't care that they've crossed over before. I cannot think of a character that fits a matchup against Superman better than this. I mean, think about it. He-Man is a good-natured dude who's known for pulling powers out of his butt crack, and Prince Adam being his alter ego puts the whole Clark Kent glasses thing to shame. I mean, just look at that bowl cut. He-Man has a vast array of continuities to pull from, and he's also magic, one of Superman's more well-known weaknesses, which helps even any odds that there might be. Not that I think there's that many when you consider everything he has going for him. And that's why he's my number one pick for an alternative match for Superman. But that's just my list. Who would you put Superman up against? Who could finally take the GOAT down? Could anyone take him down? Comment below and let me know what you think. Anyway, that's been me with truth, justice, and all of that nonsense. See y'all next time.